Hi, Howard Jones here with this week's short watercolour tutorial. One of the questions I get asked most is how do you move from the tight style or a realistic style to a more loose impressionistic style? And what I've got for you this week I hope will prove to be extremely useful in that respect. I want to show you how I managed to shift from or an example, one of the ways that really helped me shift from the tight style to the loose style. And it's a question I get asked probably more than any other question. How do you move from tight style or realistic style to a more loose, a more impressionistic style? And I can't make a higher recommendation than this exercise. Basically, let's deal with something, an everyday object, a very familiar object that we all see probably almost every day of our lives, and that's trees. The reason why I choose this subject matter to demonstrate trees in the loose style is because they offer just about everything that that you need to know about practical skills, and just opening up your ideas towards what is the loose style? Why is it different? Can you identify the loose style over the tight style? We all tend to refer to it as just, I just want to loosen up, I paint very tight, and I hear remarks like that. But really we need to sort of identify what makes a loose style painting a loose style painting. And after all, it's a broad spectrum. One person's idea of a loose style painting could be another person's idea of something very abstract, and conversely could go in the other direction. One person's idea of the loose style might only just be one step away from a tight style or realistic style. So I think the first thing, there's two main issues that you've got to bear in mind when you're moving towards a loose style, and that is to be economical with your brushwork. And the second thing is that you have to reduce the information but retain the identification. If you were counting your brush strokes and made 50 brush marks, maybe more, 150 brush marks, you've got to learn how to reduce that to painting that same object with less than 10%, perhaps, ballpark figure of what you were previously doing. Let me just show you some sort of ideas. Big brushes help, by the way, so you want to move away from small brushes. And if your trees were tending to be a little bit like this example here, much like my own were before I moved into the loose style, before I started really concentrating on what made the loose style, then this video is going to be very useful. If your work's looking, if your trees are looking a little bit like this, then stick with me here and I'll show you how to remedy this. You might want to move from that to something more like this, a much looser style. You can almost count the brush marks in each of these trees. I'd give up counting the amount of times I made contact with the brush to produce the leaves in this tree. So let me show you an example how you'd move from this to that. The first thing is a large brush, okay, and the likelihood is, I'll show you what we might be doing it when we're painting here. We're painting this type of tree. We might pick up firstly too small a brush, okay. I have in my hand here size 5 round, and this one here is a size 10 round. Of course it does depend on the size of the paper that you're using and the size of the object that you're painting. So this tree would be a tree in close proximity to us. So get rid of this brush straight away, because this tree here is probably being painted over and over with a small brush. The dots and the dabs that created the foliage up here can be replaced with something more like this. And the main difference is too small a brush, using only the point of the brush, okay, and holding the brush like a pen. So the brain has, rather the hand seems to have its own brain. an independent brain. It's because we're so used to writing with objects that feel like this in our hands that we subconsciously do it. We don't realize we're doing it. We pick something up and we immediately turn it into our fingers as we were holding a pen. You've got to get rid of out of that habit. It can be tricky. You've got to get out of that habit. Instead, pick up the brush, larger brush in this case, and you can actually see the full length of the brush on the other side. So I'm just fixing that brush between my thumb and 2 or 3 sometimes fingers on of the hand. Okay, so bearing this tree in mind, and this is probably what we're aiming to do. I can try and keep those in the same shot here. So gone is the sort of use of the point of the brush. Instead, and I'll just pick up any colour here for the moment, just making a green, and I would first of all probably start with the canopy, with the foliage, and it's a skimming off the belly of the brush. So the anatomy of a brush, quite simple. It has a belly, that's the side, and it has a point. Now, forget the point. You know, you will use it, of course, from time to time, but the thing is, the belly of the brush covers far more surface much quicker, making you, allowing you to make fewer, much less contact, if you like. So you're not picking off and dabbing into these little tiny little clusters of individual leaves. There's your tree. That's seconds. That takes literally seconds. I can't remember. That probably took about nearly 5 minutes, probably, to take. So 5 seconds, 5 minutes. Even if that's 20 seconds, there's a big difference. So that is a huge, I think, it's something that made such a huge difference to my to helping the cause of me moving from tight style to the loose style. So looking at something else here, another trees en masse. I mean, this is why I think trees are such a great subject matter for this exercise, is to get you shifting your ideas and opening up your ideas. Incidentally, as a by the by, just look at how that's formed, that's mutated that bit of water and paint there. And that's what we mean by sort of, if you're doing the right things, watercolour will paint itself, okay? I could have lied and pretended that I intended to do that and have that effect. These are the exciting things that happen when you paint in the loose style. Anyway, moving on. So, you know, we've looked at how not to paint an individual tree or individual trees. Let's look at how not to paint trees en masse. So I hope you agree that, you know, this is probably something akin to how I used to paint years ago. Very regimented tree trunks, again off the point of the brush, and again I would probably have been using a smaller brush, making, you know, perfect little tree trunks with vertical strokes like this, and then making shapes en masse that. Couple of issues here. First of all, they're not painted off the belly of the brush. They've just been sort of painted in very round like this. It's a very flat effect to them. So, and instead, when they could look more like this, trees en masse, okay? And you'll hopefully see the difference here, is that it's great. It's really, I think it's far more sort of contemporary to think about, we think of trees as being soft, rounded objects, similar to what we do, how we think about clouds in the sky. The truth is, you know, if you can create geometric shapes, more geometrical shapes, then there's going to be far more interest in your trees. Let me just show you exactly, I'll do a quick example again here. So trees en masse. Big brush. Let me show you another trick here that you might want to consider using, and that is, let me just mix up some paint. Sorry, just mixing up some paint here. So forget this sort of round shape that we tend to think of in terms of trees, the outer shape or the overall shape. Let's keep some rigid squareness to square edges to these to the overall shape of the object. And again, off the belly of the brush, if I want a clean edge, I'll turn to take a slight angle on the brush and give it a sharp edge like that. And then into here, some more geometrical shapes again. And then to avoid this flatness that we see, a sort of flat grey colour, what we do is we load up a different colour, and off the belly of the brush just drop it in places like this. Okay. And then when we get to putting the tree trunks in, I mean, we could make a mass of trees at distance. Picking up slightly different colour paint all the time, using two colours. Nice geometric shapes out here like this. And then of course we would get down to the bottom part. It's okay to use the point of the brush at this stage, but however, having said that, you can always still use the side of the brush. And what I'm doing here is, you probably can't tell from the video, but what I'm doing is this metal ferrule, this metal bit of the brush here, is pushed and scrapes against the paper, and there's just enough contact off the brush fibre itself to give me some paint. So the ferrule is actually scraping the paper through the paint as it's delivered. So as I say, on mass, this would be trees on mass, rather than have this, you know, going around your shapes and seeing them as perfect round shapes with their own individual little tree trunks. You got to break things up and start developing a quicker way of working. There is more broken paint delivery to this when you're working off the belly of the brush and scraping the ferrule. If you get too precious about your brushes, then buy yourself some really cheap brushes. You know, I use, this is a hoghead. This is really cheap. I think I bought them in a local supermarket, I think for about £2. I'm not sure what that is in dollars. $3, something like that, for about 20 brushes. And you can use this technique that I just showed you, without worry of this precious brush being destroyed, because it does call from time to time for some aggressive brushwork, but that aggressive sort of contact that you make is what really instills, or imparts rather, the actual the character of the tree. So what I was saying earlier about, the job of the loose style painter is to retain the identity of the object, but reduce the information, reducing the brushwork. And although you don't have to paint quickly, it's a good habit to get into, even if it's something you drop later and you slow down later. Because by painting quickly, you're less likely to be rendering perfect little shapes to tell your viewer that, oh, by the way, I better make sure that you know this is a tree. I better put each tiny little leaf on it. Our viewers, they need a bit of interaction. I think one of the great things about the loose style is it's sort of viewer participation. If you spell everything out to them, they might just get a bit bored of your painting looking at it. So if you invite them to be inquisitive, but leave just enough information in the object to tell them what they're looking at, it's more entertaining for both the painter and the viewer, the audience. So there we have it. Just moving from tight to loose, using trees as an exercise example. Once you've sort of learnt to identify, it's always good to go out into the field, of course, I paint outdoors as much as I can. It's always good to get out and get familiar with your subject matter, because look at the difference between these conifer trees in this quick sketch compared to, say, you know, these trees here. It could just be a row of tall bushes, hawthorn bushes, or even hazel, or even smaller birch trees, something like that. And look at the characteristic difference in the shape of these. So, you know, there is no limitation in using brushes that seemingly don't suit the job. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You get the best work, the best brush marks, the most characterful marks, expressive marks, call it what you want, from often a brush that you might think, I wouldn't use that for painting trees. It's the perfect brush for painting trees, as long as you're prepared to break out of the rules, let's say, of the type painting. I'm just playing around here, scrubbing away, and this is very different to a tight style painting approach. So I hope that's been useful. You know, you can apply these once you've learned to paint these paint this way, paint trees this way rather. You can take that on and apply it to virtually any object on this planet, even man-made objects like buildings and things like that. This is the essence, I think, of the loose style. It's economy of brushwork, learning how to retain the identity of your subject matter, even though you're reducing the amount of times you're making contact with the paper, you're reducing the brushwork, and making sure that you're always using larger brushes and painting mostly from the belly of the brush. Just take some scrap paper and have fun, because it's just the best fun. So hope you've enjoyed this week's short tutorial, and do remember, please, if you haven't already, to subscribe, and if you want immediate notifications as to when my new videos get uploaded to YouTube, just click on the bell icon. So in the meantime, happy painting, thanks for your company, and see you again.